Hey everyone, Ruff here, bringing you sense and movement as a Terran player when playing against opponents on the ladder or in StarCraft in general. I'm going to be showing you some of the very basic things that you need to keep in mind when actually playing your games as Terran. One of the basic ones that every race normally has to do is do scouting. And as you can see here, by scouting, you can kind of manipulate how you do your build order. As you can see here, I'm doing a factory opening, but I did manage to scout his probe coming extremely early. So I decided to go for a safer build by canceling that refinery and going for a barracks right away. So this is why it's very important to do any kind of scouting, even if you can scout immediately the worker right in the beginning. Because if you were to keep that factory down or that refinery down, the Protoss would go ahead and try to counter it, and then the probe will be even more abusive in your base by attacking your workers. So it just gives you a small idea of what you need to do. And as you saw there with my SCV, I scouted his gateway. I moved within range, and then I pulled back as if I was walking outside of his base, but then went into the corner of his base. By doing that, you kind of trick your opponent into thinking that the SCV walked out of the base. That way, later on, you can get scouting information if they decide not to scout their base. So as you can see here, my SCV didn't get scouted until a little later in the game. And at the 5-minute and 30-second mark, normally that's when you want to scout to see what's going on. That way you can see what kind of tech it is. If you go a little sooner or a little later, then you won't find out what they're doing. So 5:30 is a really good time to scout against any race, because that's actually when they start building up whatever tech they're going to do. So as you can see here, I was able to see that he expanded and he's playing a macro game. So in this situation, when you get attacked unsuspectedly, you have to immediately pull workers off your mineral line. In a situation against Protoss, if they try to bust your front. So what you do is you're going to go ahead and, on this map, you notice that you always want to take the high ground, as you see here. And notice that because of my build order with 5 barracks, I don't need to continuously pull my SCVs because I know I'll have enough units to deal with the Protoss forces. So by holding that ramp, you notice that the Protoss can't really get into your base and they can't pick off your Marines because of the high ground. And anytime you are getting attacked by a large number of units, you always want to get a bunker up immediately in response to that. Now later on in this game, I actually wanted to push out and attack him, but he snuck up behind my base. Now most players would react by going ahead and going back into their base to try to counter, but the thing is he has sentries, and if you were to try to go back up your ramp, he would just force field the ramp and kill all your workers and then build back up. So instead of turning back into my base, I decided to go ahead and attack him, and I also decided to pull all my workers as well and click on the mineral line in the enemy base. That way you save all your workers if you decide to do some kind of base trade situation. So this is another kind of game sense that is very important when playing against opponents. You kind of want to know if you can attack them or not. And if you know there's a really large army coming in your base and your army moved out of your base, chances are the opponent won't have enough forces at home because he's attacking you that you could go ahead and attack them as well. So this is just kind of an idea of game sense that everybody should know and use. Now, because I was able to save all my workers, you notice that as soon as you get a base up or as soon as your command center reaches another base in a base trade situation, you can immediately start mining at full saturation because all those workers decided to get out of the base. So this is actually an upper hand of using some kind of game sense instead of drastically attacking the opponent with all your SCVs when you have no army at home. It's better just to pull those SCVs out of your base, bring it to your army, and come back. Now in this situation, as you saw, I was trying to be a little cheesy against the player, And when I put down that barracks, I immediately put down another barracks in my base. That way, if it did get spotted, I could cancel it and continuously build normal like I'm doing here. So I built that other barracks in my base in order to do that. Now, had my barracks gone up in the enemy base, I could cancel the barracks in my base in order to get the money back. That way you can perform the cheese situation. It's another kind of game sense that people need to know. In this situation, you're getting cheesed, and game sense comes into play most of the time when you're getting cheesed or during early aggression. Not so much during the macro game, because during the macro game it's more micro and more armies clashing against each other. So most of the game sense is going to come in the early or mid game. So as you can see here, normally when you get cheesed, you want to have that kind of game sense. So here you notice that your front got busted. There's no way you can stop it. You don't have enough forces. So what I did here is I lifted my factory off. I landed it in front of the Protoss force to kind of give me a little bit of time to build up some units. So even though I'm sacking that factory, it is giving me a lot more mining time. It's allowing me to produce units. It's allowing me to get medevacs out in order to try to attempt to stop that Protoss cheese from destroying me. So as you can see here, I do an attempt, and even though I do an attempt, I get force fielded in, which is kind of bad in this situation. And you notice that your army is still going to lose. So another kind of game sense you want to keep in mind is if you know that the enemy is continuously sending waves and waves of units, if there's a way to get to the enemy base, it's always good to do a counterattack, especially against Protoss, because they have this warp-in fetish whenever they're attacking to continuously warp in at your base. So this is another kind of game sense or movement that you want to take against an opponent. So as you can see, even though the army value for the Protoss is a lot higher, without any kind of reinforcements at his base, you're able to take down his nexus. You're able to draw the game. You're able to try to weasel your way back into the game and win it by flying around and mining. So as you can see, because of that situation, the Protoss tries to all in, and you're able just to build a lot of defense, just hold on for a little while and win the game by doing that. So here in this situation, I'm playing against a Zerg player, and you notice when you see a drone move out toward the mineral line and you send that early scout, you know that they're going to go ahead and try to put down a hatchery. So if they're trying to put down that hatchery, you kind of want to block it. And by blocking it, you can either use your SCV, but when it starts to get low on HP, you kind of want to build some kind of building to get in the way to keep that Zerg from expanding. If you can actually manage to pull this off, then the Zerg is way behind in the early game. And I noticed that by 4 minutes, if the Zerg has not started to attacking your engineering bay with Zerglings, you can almost always assume that there's going to be some kind of cheese following up behind it. So this is another kind of game sense that you get the experience from playing online. So here you notice, okay, well, my engineering base started to get attacked at 5 minutes, so there's something wrong there. So as you can see, I'm trying to counter against whatever this cheese is going to be by building a wall off at my front and not bothering to expand. So here you'll notice that the Zerg decides to bust in my base with Banelings. Now, the only way to really stop this is to kind of know what's up. So I already knew right away that there was going to be some kind of cheese, and the best thing to do is to build an extra bunker by your command center in a situation that you think you're going to get either Baneling bust or Roach bust. So because I knew that that hatchery wasn't coming up anytime soon, that there was no way that the Zerg was going to do some really heavy macro game. So here in this situation, you notice that I have a barracks building a marine when the SCV walks my base, but I immediately go for a tech lab because that's the kind of opening I wanted to do. By building that marine, it kind of scares the SCV not to sit by where the add-on would build, and it allows the SCV to continue walking into your base. So here I'm playing against a Zerg opponent that is going Mutalisk. So when they go Mutalisk, you can normally almost always assume that they're going to go Mutaling. So if I'm going a mech build, if there are no roaches, I really wouldn't focus on getting tanks. I would focus more so on getting Thors and Hellions to deal with Mutas and to deal with Lings. So as you notice that because the Zerg continuously keeps harassing with Mutalisk, and I notice that the Mutalisk numbers keep going higher and higher and higher, that I know that the Zerg is going for a Ling Muta heavy composition. So if I'm playing any kind of mech build, I would go for Thors and Hellions rather than going for tanks in order to counter the Zerg's army. But that's about it for game sense and movement, everybody. If you have any questions, feel free to drop it in the forum. I did make another video with some kind of game sense as well. So go ahead and check that out, and I'll see you guys later.